My jealous mother-in-law tried to ruin our wedding by bringing my husband's ex-friend, but we turned the tables on her in the best way possible. Hey, so before I start, I just wanted to say that I'll obviously be using fake names here. My husband is Dean, 28 male, and my mother-in-law is Sandra, 52 female. I, 30 female, have been with Dean for 5 years, and we got engaged 6 months ago. This is my first serious relationship since college, and I knew that if I was ever to get married, it would definitely be to Dean. I haven't really dated a lot of guys. I only have 3 ex-boyfriends. 2 of them were flings from high school, and only 1 serious boyfriend in college. After that, I got really busy with work, and so I wasn't able to meet people or go out on dates. I met Dean at work when I started at the company I was previously employed in. I worked there for a year, during which I fell in love and started dating him, but soon enough I got a better offer from another company, and I decided to take that. I'm still working there, and I earn more than Dean, which he doesn't have a problem with, and even appreciates. Sandra doesn't like that at all and has made it a point to tell me that I should look for a job that pays less so that it doesn't lead to ego clashes between me and Dean in the future. I think it's a pretty ridiculous thing to say, so I never paid her much mind. But once we got engaged, she started bugging me about a lot of other things as well. Like, she didn't like the fact that I was older than Dean, but literally what am I supposed to do about that? And it's not even like I'm a decade older, like her husband was. It's just 2 years, so it doesn't matter. She doesn't like the fact that I dress in business casual clothes all the time and wants me to wear the pretty floral dresses that she and her friends prefer. Look, I have nothing against floral dresses, but the kind of clothes Sandra and her friends wear are very old-fashioned, and I don't like them. It's just not my personal style. She has a bunch of problems with me that she loves to pick at whenever we meet, but you get the drift. She just doesn't like me, never has, and never will because obviously she's a boy mom. You know the type. The ones who never receive the love they wanted from their husbands, so they start expecting that love from their son instead. That's the kind of mother she is. But thankfully, Dean never has been a mama's boy, and I'm always going to be grateful for that. In fact, he himself has admitted that he finds his mother's behavior really strange sometimes and doesn't like it when she gets possessive. The only reason we've even put up with her so far is because Dean's dad passed away a couple of years ago, and she's been really lonely since. So, she literally has no family except her son, and anytime they get into a fight, she starts to guilt trip him, and he fails to cut her off. I won't say that it's an ideal arrangement, but I get it. So I've also managed to stay quiet about things for the most part. Sandra and I have had our differences, but I know she's a lonely old lady, and I don't want her to suffer because of me. I'm not a pushover, but I'm also not completely heartless. And yes, maybe it's the guilt, but I'd managed to put up with her and her annoying behavior for a really long time. I'd ignored all the digs she'd take at me, and I'd rarely ever fight back. But I put my foot down a couple of months before the wedding when she tried to interfere in the planning. And Dean put a stop to it immediately as well. He told my mother-in-law that she wasn't a part of the wedding, and she wasn't paying for the wedding either, so she had no say in the planning. She got into a really bad argument with him over that and said that he was picking me over her, and that meant that he was going to abandon her soon enough as well. He did console her and reassure her that he wasn't going to leave her alone in her old age, but now he was getting married, and his future wife came first. He explained to her that she was in the wrong here, and couldn't always expect royal treatment just because she was his mother. She would have to accept that I was equally important to him, if not more. She said that she understood back then, but I had my doubts, if I'm being honest. I turned out to be right as well because a few days ago, right after the ceremony, Sandra walked in with one of Dean's friends, ex-friend, to be more precise. Rio, 28 male, had been a really close friend of Dean growing up, but they'd had a massive fallout last year, and it happened to be over me. Rio used to come over often, and we'd go out on double dates with whoever he happened to be with at the time, almost every other week. Dean and Rio were really close, so naturally, I also put in an effort to be friends with him. We happened to share a lot of the same interests as well, and we'd geek out over those common interests, but that was about it. I never considered him as anything more than a friend, but as it turns out, he most certainly did, and it came out in the worst possible way. I don't want to get into that right now since it's irrelevant to the story here, but all you guys need to know is that Rio and Dean almost got into a physical fight back then, and haven't spoken ever since. So, Sandra showing up to our reception with him was nothing short of nasty. She knew exactly what had happened, and that was all the more reason for her to bring him by. And it was so disgusting because not only was she doing this to hurt me, but she also didn't seem to give a damn about her own son's feelings either. We were scandalized to see him there, and so were most of our close friends, and they even offered to escort him out, but Sandra looked really smug with him in tow. I wasn't half as bothered by Rio's presence as Dean was, honestly, because I didn't care for Rio. I didn't like him, but Dean absolutely hated him. So I was trying to talk to him and make sure he didn't do anything crazy, and we could deal with this without creating chaos. To my surprise, I realized that Dean didn't need my help with that at all. He got up to give a speech a few minutes after he saw Rio and his mother socializing with the other guests like it was no big deal. And I tried to stop him, but he told me to just trust him on this one, and so I did. I decided to let him do whatever he wanted to because, honestly, he'd earned it. Sandra had done something awful, but unfortunately the one she'd wanted to hurt wasn't bothered much. But her own son was. Her plan was a huge misfire. She was about to realize it because as soon as Dean got hold of the mic, he started talking about how his mother had loved him more than what was necessary his entire life. I knew he was going to expose Sandra, and so I didn't say a word and let him continue. I didn't even care if we were causing a scene. It was our damn wedding, and we'd do whatever we wanted to anyway. Dean gave a speech about how his mom had always tried to outshine his girlfriends, and he was glad to have finally met a woman whom she could never shake. Referring to me, he then talked about how his mother's standards in men had dropped considerably because after his dad, she jumped straight to Rio, who was almost half her age. And Dean's a really funny guy, so even while he was talking, it all sounded like he was performing a comedy routine, and everyone was laughing along as well, even though the things he was saying were pretty mean. I could see Sandra tearing up, and Rio going red in the face in a corner, and finally, when Dean ended with a joke about Sandra wanting to catch the bouquet at her own son's wedding, and all our guests started laughing. She literally ran out while Rio walked out behind her. I don't think people even noticed that she'd left due to how embarrassed she was because they were too busy laughing. I was glad that my husband had chosen to deal with this in the best and most mature way, and I was so proud of him. I really think he should become a stand-up comedian because no other guy would be able to make a routine out of nothing on the spot like he'd done that day. And the jokes were all really funny as well, even though they were meant to be cruel. But his quick wit saved our wedding from turning into a dramatic showdown, which is definitely what Sandra had wanted it to be, so that our wedding day would forever become about her and not us. Unfortunately for her, her stunt had failed, and she was nothing more than a blip in the proceedings at best. We were really proud of ourselves and have been riding that high for a while now. Some of our friends have managed to record some parts of it as well, and we do replay it from time to time to get a good laugh out of it. Not that we spend all our time as a married couple talking about Sandra and Rio, but it's hard to resist the temptation to talk crap about them. Sandra hadn't texted us after that whole incident, and we were so sure that after that, she'd never speak to us ever again, but unfortunately, she did. She texted both Dean and I this morning demanding that we issue a public apology on all our socials for whatever had been said at our wedding because it was all really humiliating, and she wasn't going to stand this nonsense. She even threatened to take us to court for defamation if we didn't do what she said, which was laughable. There was no fame in the first place. What defamation is she even talking about? Besides, she's the one who showed up with a guy we hadn't invited, and she definitely didn't have the authority to bring whoever she pleased to a private event. She tried to insult us, we humiliated her, and it was completely fair. She's trying to play the age card and claiming that as an older woman. It was incredibly dehumanizing for her to hear her own son say such vile things about her in front of so many people. She tried to guilt-trip me as well, saying that as a woman myself, I should be sorry that I let any of this happen at all while I sat back and watched. I don't know how any of this makes sense because, to me, it just feels like she's playing the age card plus the woman card to excuse her actions. She knew very well what she was doing when she brought Rio to our wedding, so she shouldn't be so surprised that there were real consequences to her actions. Dean also doesn't believe that he has anything to be sorry about and says that just because she's his mother doesn't mean that she's absolved of every awful thing that she does. So, Aita for making a mockery out of my mother-in-law when she brought an unwanted guest with her to ruin our wedding? Update 1. Hi there, I'd just like to add something here since a lot of people have been asking what exactly had happened between Rio and Dean. I didn't talk about it because then the post would become even longer than it already was, and also because I really didn't think it was relevant. The point was that they'd had a nasty fight, and everyone who was close to us had known about it. But since you guys want to know, I'll share the specifics of the incident. Last year, on Dean's birthday, we invited a few of our close friends to celebrate, and Sandra had insisted on coming even though she'd known that it would mostly be just us and our friends. Even after being told no multiple times, she still showed up, and once she was there, it would be just too awkward to tell her to go away, so we let her stay. We were obviously all drinking and trying to have fun, and since my mother-in-law doesn't drink, she just sat in the corner and tried to talk to people but ended up being ignored by most people. Rio and his girlfriend at the time were also there, and they'd been dating for months, which was his longest relationship so far, and he seemed kind of serious about her too. So we were all giving them some space too since they seemed really into each other. But Sandra somehow managed to get Rio's girlfriend to talk to her, and she was a really sweet girl, so she didn't mind talking either, and Rio ended up hanging out with us instead. We were all pretty drunk, and for some reason, one of our friends suggested playing Spin the Bottle. I don't know why they did that, but everyone seemed really enthusiastic about it as well, even though I had to remind them several times that we weren't in high school, and most of us were in serious relationships. But the single folks in our friend circle were all drunk and out of control, so they were hyping the game up, and Rio, knowing that his girlfriend would be distracted since she was talking to Sandra, decided to grab my hand and ask me to join the game so that we'd finally have an excuse to kiss. We were all very drunk, but even in that state we knew that he'd crossed a line. He was laughing as if he'd said something funny, and I had to force him to let go of my hand. Everyone present had heard what he'd said loud and clear and was stunned. Dean was also quite shocked and didn't know what to say for a few minutes after that. It was only when Rio's girlfriend walked out of our house crying that we were all brought back to reality. Dean very politely asked Rio to leave because he didn't want to start a fight, and Dean is a lot bigger than him as well, so he could get seriously hurt if he had tried to fight him that day. But Rio refused to leave and actually shoved Dean, saying that he was sick of him taking away everything that he loved. I didn't know what he was talking about until later on when Dean told me that he was referring to an incident in college where this senior that Rio had a huge crush on had also decided to ask Dean out. He'd obviously said no out of respect for Rio, but I guess he still hadn't let that one go. They started arguing in front of everyone, and it was getting really heated when once again Rio decided to shove Dean. And this time, it was much harder than the first. I could sense that Dean was about to lose his temper, and I decided to step in, even though I was not even half as strong as either of them, and it was a huge risk for me physically. But I was sure that Dean wouldn't hurt me in a million years, and this was my only bet to prevent a fight from breaking out. So I did what I had to do. It was really immature of him, and Rio was obviously in the wrong, but I couldn't control him. So I decided to intervene and drag Dean away from him. I was sure that he would have beaten the crap out of Rio that day had I not stopped him. But anyway, he did leave eventually. And it was an awful day since Dean lost the only friend he'd had since he was a child. None of our other friends had kept in touch with Rio after that, but for whatever reason, Sandra had decided to stay in touch with him. We didn't even find out that they'd been talking this entire time, even after what had happened at the party. Sandra only admitted that she'd never cut him off a few days after the wedding. I guess she hadn't intended to let us know, but she'd slipped up. She'd even defended it, saying that Rio was like a second son to her, which is why she demanded that we post our apologies soon since we were literally making a mockery out of a mother-son relationship. It's really ironic that Sandra, of all people, thinks that we're the ones making a mockery out of the mother-son relationship since, as far as I'm concerned, pushing your own son aside just to humiliate your daughter-in-law is much worse than whatever we did. Anyway, we've obviously told her that we won't be apologizing to her at all, and she can do whatever she wants to. I'm over it, and so is Dean. We regret not cutting her out of our lives ages ago, and yeah, I know we should have. But it's not that easy to just cut a parent off, but Dean is doing it now, and I'm really proud of him. I hope she leaves the situation alone and stops bothering us. Update 2, yes, we've blocked her. We blocked her the day after our wedding itself, but she's been using all her friends' accounts and numbers, and we can't keep track of it all, so we just keep blocking the accounts as the messages come. It's been close to 2 weeks, and she still hasn't dropped the topic. It's honestly getting on my nerves at this point because Dean and I are supposed to leave for our honeymoon in a week, and if this continues, we won't be able to enjoy our honeymoon to the fullest. There's been no word from Rio yet, so we're thankful for that, at least one less psycho to deal with. I've decided that if she doesn't stop, Dean and I are going to visit her and tell her that we'll press charges against her if she doesn't stop harassing her. We don't know how to get through to her otherwise, and I know she's not going to take a text or a call seriously. Deep down, Dean and I are both well aware that what she really wants is for us to get so exasperated that we end up talking to her just to tell her to stop this madness. And she should count herself lucky because that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to drop by her house this evening or tomorrow, I don't know, and then we'll explain to her that what she did and what she's continuing to do to us is actually just psychotic, and if she doesn't stop, then we'll have to report her for harassing us. And then it has to be in person so that she knows that we mean business. We've already responded to some of the texts with warnings, but she just doesn't seem to get it. We haven't reported her, or better yet, filed for a restraining order against her, but she's harmless, if I'm being honest, and we just don't want all that trouble right before our honeymoon. It'll be just too much of a hassle to do all of that, and it's easier to just warn her verbally. Dean has been really upset about all of this, and I feel awful for him. I know Sandra meant to make me feel bad, but that's not what's happening at all. I hardly even care about what she does because I've accepted that she's a horrible human being, so her actions are actually only affecting the son that she claims to love so much. It's really sad because I hate to see him sad, especially because of Sandra. I don't even understand why she hates me so much. I know she's jealous that Dean seems to love me more than her, but surely this is insane, to go to such lengths just to humiliate your daughter-in-law because you want your son to love you more. It's disgusting. And I think she definitely has psychological problems and needs to get herself tested. This is disturbing. Update 3. Hey, I'm so sorry about the late update, you guys, but I was really busy and just didn't have the time to get on Reddit. But we're about to leave for our honeymoon in a day, and I have some time to spare, so I'll just fill you guys in on what happened after the last update real quick. So, like I said, Dean and I went to visit Sandra the day after the update, and she initially refused to open the door to let us in. But when we told her that we didn't even care if she'd let us in or not, we were just here to inform her that if she didn't stop harassing us, then we'd be forced to take her to court. That seemed to get under her skin, and she literally flung the door open and started yelling at us. She accused us of humiliating her in front of all our guests on purpose, and that if anything, we were the ones who should be scared of her dragging us to court. She looked me right in the eye and said that I was the one responsible for this whole mess, and that my involvement with her son was what made her take such extreme steps. She even told us that she'd been hoping that Rio would cause a ruckus at our wedding and ruin it for us, but he turned out to be pretty useless, and her whole plan had just backfired. She sounded so hateful and angry that I was just actually taken aback by her tone and voice. And so was Dean. The fact that she was openly admitting that she'd intended on breaking us up was horrifying, even though we knew the truth. It was another thing altogether to hear her admit it. Sandra then accused me of being a homewrecker, which was just wrong on so many levels that I don't even want to get into it. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. And then she told Dean that when he realizes what a mistake he's made by choosing me over her, he'll eventually come crawling back to her. And she'll take him back because she loves her son, but until then, she doesn't even want to see his face. Then she slammed the door shut, and that was it. I guess she'd expected Dean to feel bad, but she doesn't know that this is exactly what he wanted, what we wanted. We're finally done with her and don't have to worry about her accompanying us on our honeymoon as well. Ha! I'm sure she'd love to go instead of me as well, given the way she acts. I hope she realizes that she needs serious therapy, but now it's not our problem to deal with anymore. I'm just looking forward to my long honeymoon with my darling husband. Now that's it.